it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be going on a bit of a journey with you, because today we're going to be chatting through an occurrence that's really been kind of like taking over my recent reading habits over the past year, 2 years, and that is going to be the topic of rereading. Specifically, I feel like I've been on a journey over the past couple years rereading books and kind of giving them another try, and then ultimately liking them significantly more than the first time I read them many years ago through that reread. This process that I've been going through has resulted in many new favorite series that I thought I had completely given up on, but giving that first book another try ultimately has led me to like love and find so many new series and books. So essentially this is a video to say, maybe think about giving books another try. Redemption is sweet, and wow, what was like 19-year-old Reagan thinking on some of these books? Because that is the age where I read initially a lot of these books, so I don't know. But without further ado, I want to basically chat through all of the books I read and then reread and loved more that second time. A lot of these books you're gonna recognize. They're some of my favorite series that I feel like I talk incessantly about, and I wouldn't be talking about them if I didn't, you know, have that gut feeling of giving them another try. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So the first book, and honestly in a lot of ways the novel that kind of triggered this whole trend, is The Thief by Megan Wallen Turner. This is a novel I read so many years ago, maybe in high school initially. This is a series that's been around for a long time, and I gave this novel a reread about 2 years ago when I first moved to Chicago, fell in love with it, loved it so much, and then subsequently have read every single book in this series, and this series has fast become one of my all-time favorite YA fantasy series. It's so fresh, it's so interesting, it's an ancient Greek inspired story where we follow a multitude of characters, but basically there are two clashing kingdoms, and one of our main characters, who's very much prevalent in this first novel, is a thief who can steal anything, and he's basically acquitted from his crimes if he's able to steal a certain artifact. This story is full of like lore and storytelling and such clever characters and maneuvering. Megan Wallen Turner constantly tricks me, and I love it so much. But yes, this is a series, one of my all-time faves, and I would not have known that if I didn't give The Thief another try, which I'm glad I did because I love this novel so much. Next, I have two Brandon Sanderson novels, which might be a little surprising. The first is Mistborn, and this is on here not because I didn't love it the first time, but I feel like when I read it again recently, it gave me a greater appreciation for this story than I feel like I initially had. I also just felt like I caught a lot more, and I just had a greater understanding of the overall plot dynamics. I obviously loved it the first time, but this time around I feel like I even loved it more. But it leads me into another reread, which is the second Mistborn trilogy, which is the Alloy of Law, which is like a flintlock fantasy set in the future, past the events of what happened in Mistborn. I initially read this, also I think my freshman or sophomore year of college. Didn't love it that much, I thought it was a little boring, but I think with all of the fresh context of the Mistborn trilogy, jumping into the Alloy of Law trilogy, and then subsequently reading books 2 and 3 after reading this, I ultimately loved this. I used to think this was just like kind of a boring offshoot. I didn't really like the setting, I didn't like the characters, but boy was I wrong. Like at first glance, this series seems like kind of a generic whodunit mystery, you know, with a main character that's like dashing and great at solving crime, like kind of like a serialized fiction setup, which is something I don't mind, but not something I read so much. But I was wrong. The series has so much more under the surface, and you really start to uncover that in books 2 or 3. The characters are so much more dynamic than I feel like I initially realized, and the mystery is so much greater than I realized. And essentially, I loved the 3 books, and I think there's another book coming out. I don't think this is technically a part of the trilogy that's part of the second trilogy of Mistborn World, which is confusing, but regardless, I love these so much, and I love so many of the characters, and I feel like the adaptation of the magic present in Mistborn, which is all about consuming and controlling metals, to a flintlock fantasy setting, so guns and other types of innovation and invention, just created such an interesting and unique twist on Brandon Sanderson's own idea. So, loved this, which I feel like everyone knew. But the rereading of Alloy of Law and the rest of this trilogy took me by surprise, and ultimately loved it. So Next series is Poison Study by Marie V. Snyder. This is also obviously a reread for me. This is the theme of the video. So this is a book I initially read in high school and I enjoyed it then, but I never really felt propelled to continue on with the rest of the series. However, I reread it late last year or middle of last year and then read books 2 and 3. And I loved this series so much. The trilogy was so strong. It's definitely one of those more original YA fantasy stories out there, but I just found it so entertaining and I really loved the setting. It was kind of like original angst, you know what I mean? Like before some of the more common tropes we run to nowadays, I feel like this kind of set the tone and kind of had a different approach to some of that angst that I'm always looking for. But yeah, I feel like Poison Study 2 is actually the weakest of the trilogy. I feel like books 2 and 3 really expand on this magical world even more. So the fact that I read this, really liked it a second time, and then finally felt compelled to continue on with the series, which I feel like is just another habit I'm trying to form. When I read a book that I like and there's more books out in that series, read them right away before you forget stuff, which is exactly what I did with this and Alloy of Law and literally every series I try to read now. So yeah, I'm really happy I picked this up. This is a YA fantasy story about a girl who is imprisoned at the beginning of the story. This is a trope I'm now realizing used often, but she's given, you know, clemency if she becomes the kind of ruling body's food taster for poison. This is also a really interesting fantasy world because it combines like traditional medieval fantasy settings with more of a communist-inspired approach, if you will, kind of like revolution style approach. It's interesting, and I again love the rest of the series, so again, another winner on the reread department. Next up is An Ember in the Ashes, another story that I read right when it came out 4 years ago. At the time, everyone thought that was a standalone, which was hilarious to think about now. I read it, I liked it, I let book 2 come out, but I really had no interest in picking it up, and then book 3 was kind of on the horizon, and I was like, maybe, you know, it's been 4 years, I would have to reread the first one, but you know, maybe I'll just give it another shot. Like I liked it, but it didn't really, I never felt really compelled to pick up the rest of the series until I started seeing early buzz for the third one. And then I reread it, and again, incredible. Such an action-packed, amazing YA fantasy story set in like an ancient Roman setting, and there's just so much mystery and adventure and also well-written angst. I love the romance, I love the world, I love the characters, I love the story. This is a series I marathoned. I read the first one, and I think I read the next 2 within like 2 weeks of each other. I could not put this down. So yes, so happy I gave this another try. This is a series you have read the first one a million years ago. I just compel you to give it a reread and pick up the rest of the books in the series because they're so strong. Definitely one of the best YA fantasy series currently being published right now. I'm dying for the 4th book. I don't know when it's coming, but I'm dying for it. But yeah, love this. Next book might come as a bit of a surprise, and that is A Darker Shade of Magic. Again, another book I feel like I read my freshman year of college, liked, didn't love, gave like 3.5 stars, was like, interesting world, a little boring, wish it had a little more meat to the plot, etc. And then, you know, I was like seeing how everyone loved books 2 and 3, and I felt kind of out of the circle, and I was like, maybe I'll give this another reread, so I did. And honestly, like, I stand by some of my original sentiment when it comes to the series, and that the first one is definitely the weakest. You love the characters, the plot is kind of predictable, and you're kind of seeing everything unfurl in front of you, but it does have so many strengths. Victoria Schwab's writing for one, and the wonderful banter and the characters that you just love from page 1. But the reason why I'm happy I reread this, because while maybe my sentiment was pretty similar to this, like I think I still gave this like a 3.754 stars, books 2 and 3 in this series are so strong that it's just worth reading this first one thinking it's medium okay to read the greatness that you'll encounter in books 2 and 3. The world is cracked open, the magic is fully explored, the characters you somehow love even more. The thing about it is just like so lovely and wonderful. This is a series Clay also read so quickly and felt the same. He's like, I liked the first one, but books 2 and 3, that's where it's at. And I could not agree more. So similarly, if you've read this, thought it was okay, seriously, check out books 2 and 3 because you will not be disappointed. Book 2 kind of has like Goblet of Fire vibes. There's like a magical competition. It's awesome. Plus pirates, plus the characters are like, I would die for them. So here we are. And the last book I'm going to talk about, I technically have not finished yet because I'm currently reading, but it honestly kind of inspired this video, and that is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. This is a book I stood by for so long that I thought I did not like. I remember reading it thinking it was so boring. I honestly think I DNF'd it, but I just have distinct memories of reading chapters being like, I don't care, I don't know, like I'm not really interested, I find this hard to read, I have a hard time getting into it. And then recently, and as I feel like I've talked about in videos, I'm like, maybe I was wrong, like let's give it another try. I rented it from the library, and it's so funny because I have such vivid memories of the chapters I thought I didn't like, but I've been rereading those same chapters. Like I remember what was going on, but like my feelings about them are like night and day. Like rereading the same exact scenes and now seeing all the clever writing and the really interesting dialogue and the plot dynamics and how Scott Lynch kind of leads you into like different scenes and how they like blend together even though they could be 20 years apart. It's just genius, and I'm loving it so much, and it's just hilarious because I thought I hated it. Which is just to say, like, through time, like, your taste and your preference for certain types of writing are gonna change. So that makes me really happy that I just am pushing myself to kind of give things another try, because you never know, you might like it more. And this is like the perfect example of this. I've flown through the first like 1/3 of this book so fast, and I'm like laughing out loud. I love all the antics. And if you would have asked me last year if I ever was gonna read this book, I'd say no, I gave it a try, I didn't like it. But here I am, rereading it, fully admitting that I now love it, and that, hey, sometimes your tastes change, and that my past self was wrong. I don't even want to say my past self was wrong, because like my feelings at the time are valid, but it just shows like you have growth as a reader, your taste can change, your opinions and your preferences can evolve over time. So just knowing that and kind of like recognizing that, and maybe seeing like some of your faves might not be your modern day faves, but you can appreciate them for, you know, what they gave you in the past, and some of your books that you didn't love so much because you might have thought they were boring or whatever, like maybe give them another try, like maybe they're to your taste now. You never know. Alrighty guys, so those are all the books I've read recently that I have loved more the second time around. Let me know down below if you've reread any books recently and they have surprised you with how much you've loved them since your first reading, because I would love to know. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye.